Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about my August wrap up, which, you know, in terms of giving you a shorter video, a shorter wrap up, this is great. But August was so slumpy. Such a reading slump month for me. I really stopped reading like the second half of the month. Like I kind of just wiped my hands of it all and said, you know what, September will be your month and you can just take it easy right now. So that's basically what I did. I read 17 days in the month of August, which isn't bad. Like for a reading slump, it's still like good, but it's because I crammed so much in the first 2 weeks and it was like, yeah, I read 14 books. I'll say it. I said it. I read 14 books. And reading 14 books in such a short period of time is still like really good, and also makes sense as to why I needed the break from reading, because I was reading so many things. You know, not my best reading month. I'll say it. It wasn't fantastic. Not everything was a super big win, but we're just gonna go over a little bit of stats and then a little bit of what I read and what I thought of them. So like I had mentioned, I'd read 14 books. I read 1,485 pages, which isn't bad. Definitely like on the lower end of pages read for me, but like not my lowest of the year. So not horrible, pretty average actually. And then as for hours listened to, I listened to 44 hours and 30 minutes of audiobooks, which is primarily how I read things. Like if I didn't read it on my like phone or Kindle, like I read it audibly. Like I have 4 physical books in front of me. So, you know, my main genres read were fantasy and romantasy with 3 each, and then followed that by contemporary and horror. No, sorry, mystery. Oh, I don't read mystery very often. My average rating still 3.5. I can't seem to kick it. That's just, it follows me everywhere I go. So let's talk about the books that I read. The first book that I completed in the month of August, wow, was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I was on the Literally Dead Book Club live show with Kayla and Elias. Oh my god. Lovely people, lovely time. It was very fun to talk about this book. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I wouldn't say this is a bad book. It's just maybe not good for Riley Sager books. It's definitely not one that I would recommend to like a seasoned horror thriller mystery reader who loves the genre, but I would recommend it to like my mom who isn't super familiar with the genre and like might not pick up on as many things as I did. She might not guess nearly as much. I feel like there's a fine line with plot twists of making sure that there's the groundwork laid for the reader to maybe pick up on them and see the twist coming and like feel like it was done well and made sense and was good, versus like it just being obvious and in a not fun way. It's a very fine line. Like you want to surprise the reader, and sometimes it's cool to feel like you are on the same page with the author and like you're like, you know, same wavelength and all. But sometimes you read something like this and you're like, I wish this was more. I wish there was something else. I think there was a lot going on in this that just didn't feel necessary to me. I really enjoyed how we started in like the cul-de-sac, the everyday American neighborhood. Anyone can go missing from the yard. Things can go horribly wrong. And having like the flashbacks of him 30 years in the future looking back on when his best friend went missing from his front yard. I feel like there was a lot that could have been explored, and then you throw in like this weird occult situation, which I really just wanted so much more from and wish that had a different outcome or like reasoning for being there. I'm trying not to spoil this. I will have like the live show in the description if you like want to hear full spoilery thoughts, but I think this is a solid book as is, but I don't think that it's super satisfying, and I don't think it's his best. I know that I've mentioned that I wish there were aliens. That was like the one thing that I was hoping for, just because like Riley Sager has done kooky out of the box things, and so I was hoping for that again. And then we didn't get aliens, which is totally fine, but there was just nothing else there to grip me enough. I think this is like a solid 3-star, 2.5 kind of read. Like, it wasn't bad, but it's just like didn't work for me. But yes, I did read that. Okay, and the next thing that I read was Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which I, yes, have seen the show. I have thoughts. It was good, but not like perfect. I definitely wish that there was a little bit more. I think 6 episodes was not enough for the story, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the sequel. Non-spoilers, of course, you know the drill. I really enjoyed the sequel. There's just something about the way Holly Jackson writes characters that really touches me. I find Pip to be very relatable. I'm really excited to read the 3rd book where she's experiencing a little bit more rage and anger to the system, which is so very, very relatable. I'm excited to see how it wraps up and everything. Like, there's definitely like an underlying big bad plot happening, and I have so many questions that I'm really hoping to get answered. But the sequel I thought was very well done. I think it hit all of the boxes of my interest and things that I was interested in. This is following a slightly different story of a missing boy, and Pip thinks that she's retired from investigating. She's like, I'm done. I've done it once. It was a danger to me and my family. And so she tries to give it up, but she just can't stay away. She just can't do it. And I just really love, like I said, how Holly Jackson writes her characters. They just feel so real. The way that Pippa constantly is referring back to her past traumas, like she's not moved on, she's not in therapy, and it's affected her character, like, as she's continuing the series. There are so many fantasy books that I'll read that just something horribly tragic will happen and they push through because there's an objective, they have to do this thing, they have to finish the quest or whatever, and it's like, yes, do that, but you never see the aftermath of like the crumbling, fallen pain of experiencing such trauma. And I love that I can see that in these books. Like, at the end, Pippa is just like sitting alone watching her family, and I just like wanted to cry for her. It was just, they touch me. I really like them. I've been buddy reading the series with my mom because the show was coming out, and we watched the show as a family. It was really fun. I am so glad that her and I are enjoying the series together. I think that's definitely making the experience more fun, like getting to chat with her about it, getting her into reading that way. Alright, oh god. Ugh. The next book that I read was Anita de Monte, Laughs Last, which is a kind of historical fiction, magical realism, mishmash genre, contemporary. I don't know still how to talk about this. If you have seen my last video where I read the best books so far according to Goodreads, this is one that was widely read and liked, and I understand why it was liked. I think that the writing is very good. I think that the author has crafted an interesting story. I think it could have been shorter. If you don't like magical realism, like, that's not something that I'm typically a big fan of, you might not like it. We're seeing a dual timeline. We're seeing Anita de Monte in her past timeline of the incident of her falling through a window and dying, and whether it being at the hands of her husband or being just a tragic accident. And it's clear in the story which side this leans on. Anita de Monte is based off a real life person, Anna Mendieta, who is like a real artist who tragically died, and it's a little bit of like a questionable death, but the author did not reach out to the family. The family weren't very pleased with the portrayal of Anna, who is a family member who they love and cherish. They didn't appreciate the way that the author made it seem like the memory of Anna died when the family is constantly talking about her and bringing attention to her. So it was just kind of like a weird situation that I morally just like don't know how to feel about it. Like, I'm not the family. Who am I to really say? I don't want to like just say like you can't read this book, but I want people to be informed going into it, making these decisions. This was not something I knew when I picked it up. I learned about it from the Goodreads reviews, thank goodness. I think that it's a sticky situation, but I'm not going to discourage anybody from reading it, but it's just something to be aware of. I don't think the writing is bad. I don't think that it's like a horrible, bad story. Like, I think that it's fun and jovial, yet dealing with harder topics, and you've got the dual timelines, like I mentioned, where the past timeline of what happened and then the current timeline of a sort of a parallel situation happening to a young girl, Raphael. And I think that it's like an interesting story at its core, but I think I would have done it a little bit different if it was me. But I do think that the audiobook narration was very well done and handled like great production, great narrators. Like, they did a great job with the book. They kept it very engaging, because there was definitely times where it lulled, where I was like, okay, we can move on to the next thing now. But yeah, I don't think it's bad. I'm not rating it. I'm just giving out information. That's my job. The next book that I read was A Dawn of Onyx, and while we're here, I'll also just talk about A Promise of Peridot? These are by Ashley Elston. Nope, that's incorrect. These are by Kate Golden. There we go. I can read a spreadsheet. And this is the first 2 books in a trilogy. I gave A Dawn of Onyx like a praising 5 stars, and I think it's because I was in a reading slump and I was trying to force myself out of it, and so listening to like a very light, easy, fun romantasy, I was like, oh, this is so good. But like, reflecting on it, it's not that good. It's very like mid. I probably would bump it down to a 4. And then A Promise of Peridot is the sequel. I gave that one a 3. I thought that it was fine. I honestly don't remember much about the sequel anymore. I definitely preferred the first book. I liked their dynamics. Basically, she has this like healing magic and is able to heal anybody in her path. Her brother is gone to war, and it's just her sister, and her mother. And her mother is very ill, but her healing magic doesn't work on her, and so they kind of just take care of her and do what they can. But then one unusual day, things are going horribly wrong, and the village is like the bad guy guards are coming to the village, and her brother shows up, and they're like trying to run away, and then she gets captured, and then she goes to the dungeon, and then she falls in love with a guy in the jail cell, you know. Like, a very classic setup for romantasy. I thought that the first book was fun and like simple and easy, nothing crazy. I didn't really care about what was happening in the sequel, but I also was like in a reading slump, so it's hard to say if like the book wasn't interesting or if it was just like me being me. But the third book, I think, might come out later this year. If not, it'll be out next year, and I'll definitely finish the series. But I might have to do a reread of the sequel to remember everything that happened. Oh god. Okay, the next one is A Vow So Bold and Deadly. This is by Bridget Kemmerer. I think this book might be in league with one of the worst that I've read this year. It's so bad. What a horrible way to end a series. I don't know what it is, especially with romantasy, but like fantasy just in general. Ending books are just not good. What's up with that? We all need to have a conversation. Why is it so hard to end a series? I can't say. I've not even started my first book, so I don't know why that is, but just the endings are never as satisfying as I want them to be or as they should be. And I will say, hot take, my OTP would probably be Harper and what's his name? I think that Harper and Gray would be my OTP, personally. I know that's against everybody else's, but that's what I would say. Now, I just don't understand how somebody can look at their characters and just go, everything that we know about you is false. Your motives aren't real. You're not a true character anymore. And I'm going to throw you into the most slowest, most boring plot possible that doesn't really matter. There's so little of consequence. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. It's so infuriating. It's so bad. Like, I don't understand why she made the decisions for anything that she made. The second book was so-so in terms of character decisions that I didn't agree with, but I was, you know, here for the ride. I was like, okay, we've got these 2 romances, everyone's gonna be happy, fun family, it's gonna be a great time. But like, none of the character decisions made any sense. I was livid. I was so mad. I hated the entire experience. This was such a bad book. I don't know how it went so horribly wrong. My hot tip to you, read A Curse So Dark and Lonely and then stop and then walk away. Imagine whatever it is you want, because whatever you imagine is probably so much better than what was written. It was so bad. It was just so bad. So read the first book, treat it as a standalone, and like move on with your happy life. Okay, the next thing that I read was This Ravenous Fate by Haley Dennings. And I will have my full thoughts in a reading vlog to come, and a NetGalley like ARC reading vlog. I think I have 2 more that I need to read for that, but I don't want to talk about this one. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, fellow booktuber who I used to watch, so I'm like familiar enough that I feel bad talking about their debut book in a less positive light. I don't think it's a bad book. It did not work for me. I think that the writing was fine. I think like she's not a bad writer, but I really didn't have an interest in the story until about like 60% or so in. In this we are following Elise and Layla. They are childhood best friends turned enemies due to a relatively traumatic instance, but you're not really like, you know what happened, but it's not really like clearly laid out and revisited. You don't really get like a strong flashback to it, so it's kind of still like an open mystery. But Layla is a vampire and Elise is heir to like the vampire killing empire. Her father like had something to do with making the bullets that are able to kill this version of vampire, and it's set in the 1920s Harlem, and like the atmosphere is cool. I might pick up the sequel. I'm still undecided. We'll see how long it takes to come out. If it comes out earlier next year, maybe I'll pick it up. But overall, nothing in the book was surprising to me. I saw all the twists coming. I didn't care a lot about anything. Like, that was my biggest complaint, is I just really didn't care. I kind of liked Layla's character. I didn't really care for Elise much at all. But I think my biggest issue with the story, like to its core, it's a mystery, but it doesn't focus on the mystery, and the characters' motives surrounding the mystery also don't make a whole lot of sense. So it was just like a pointless read in some way. It just didn't feel satisfying or necessary. Like, I didn't feel like I was gaining anything from it. But I do think that it's an important story to have out there, because people are going to see themselves in it. People are going to, I know that it's like a very personal story to the author, because it's about everything that she doesn't get to read. And so like it's hard, and I don't want to bash it because I know a lot of people love it. So the next thing that I read was a little poetry collection called Blood Orange by, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, and I'm sorry if I'm not, Yafa Az. They use they, she pronouns. They're transgender, and this is a poetry collection about Palestine and the recent and not so recent events, and how it feels to be indigenous to the land, and the horrible things happening, and how people are, insert nice way to say things here that I can't think of, how people can be so insensitive to such topics. I think that the poems were good. It's very short. It was like 55 pages. I got it from my library. I think that they were good. Like, there was one poem that like really stood out to me, being like, ooh yeah, this is really good, and the rest of them were just like nice. But also, I don't know how to gauge poetry. Like, I think I read 3, including this one, 3 good poetry collections this year. I'm just like not a poetry reviewer. That's just not who I am. I can't tell you these things, but I can tell you that I gave it 4 stars. Like, that's just the vibe. When I finished it, that's how I felt, with 4 stars. The next 2 books that I read were Dungeons & Dragons, Dungeon Club, Roll Call, and Time to Party. This is by Molly Knox Ostertag and Xanth Booma? Molly Knox Ostertag is an author I've read from before, and I really enjoy their works. I loved these so much. They're so cute. It's middle grade graphic novels set following two best friends who start a D&D Dungeons club at their school. The first book is focused on how one of the friends doesn't really want this club to happen, doesn't really want to branch out and make new friends, just wants to stay rather introverted and like keep this as like their thing. Whereas the second book is following the other best friend. I'm sorry, I don't know the names. And she's got a lot on her plate, and her family's telling her like, you gotta stop doing Dungeons and Dragons, you gotta start growing up. And the other best friend, the original best friend that's followed in the first book, is also discovering like their gender and deciding like who they want to be and what feels right to them. And so they're like lightly heavy, but not really. Like, it's just all beautifully done. It's all told, so you get the D&D story, but you also get their real life story, and it's just so sweet, and I love it so much. It does seem like there's going to be a third one based on how the second one ended, and I'm just having like a lot of good times with them. They're just sweet and wholesome. Like, you can't go wrong. Even if you don't care about Dungeons and Dragons, like, it's just a good middle grade graphic novel, and I had a lot of fun with them. Okay, last ones, let's go. So next thing that I read was First Light Wins by Ashley Easton, and this is very good. I definitely recommend this. I had a lot of fun with the story. It's not like my favorite thing ever, but I was also in a reading slump, so hard to say, but being in a reading slump and really enjoying this is like a good sure sign. This is following a girl. Her name is Evie Porter, and Evie Porter is dating this guy Ryan, and things are just, you know, going nice. They're living in the South in like Louisiana or something. She's, you know, their relationship's starting to get a little bit serious. She's making her way in, but she has a secret, and she's not actually Evie Porter. Evie Porter is her secret identity, because she's on a job, and I don't know what the job is because I'm not going to spoil it for you, but this is such a clever mystery kind of thriller. I wouldn't say it's like super thrilling. I wouldn't say it's like super mysterious either, but it like falls in the genre. Basically, she's investigating for a job, and you're seeing like their relationship, and then things get figured out, and just the way that everything unravels, especially like by the end, the way that things unravel and get pieced back together, and like, just everything about it is done so well. It's so clever, it's so smart. It just made me so, it's satisfying. This is maybe the most satisfying book I've read this year. It just felt great. Everything about it, I was just like, yes. Yes, 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 yes. The narrator puts on a cute little southern accent when she's talking, and it's just so precious, and I love everything about this. I also love Ryan. I definitely recommend. It was a lot of fun. It's just like a nice, easy, light thriller. I can understand why people enjoy it so much. The next thing that I read was Devourer of Men by Nikki St. Croix. This is a novella set in the same world as The Lost Boys, which is the Peter Pan retelling. This is following Crocodile and Hook and Wendy, and they're reconnecting after some years. Rock and Hook are teaming up, being enemies that are working together to find Wendy once and for all. And I think this book just needed to be longer. I think that it tried to do kind of a lot by trying to rekindle these two enemies being friends and maybe lovers, while also finding Wendy and rekindling that relationship, because she's been like gone for years. And I just like, so much happened and yet like nothing happened. It was quick. The pacing was a little strange. I didn't feel like I really got to know the characters. If you hadn't read the original books, like, you wouldn't know them at all. Like, not a lot would make sense to you. And I just feel like there was a better way to write this than it was. Like, it's not bad, and I'm gonna probably continue with the series, because like, I like the three of them together. I like the two of them together. Like, it was good. It's a good dynamic. I just feel like we needed more moments between the characters to like really get to know them and like understand why they have like their struggles with each other, while also like why they're trying to come together and like why they like each other. I just feel like there just need to be more. And then like, also up the plot a little bit. I am a plot girly. I would like a little more plot going on in my story. So that's where that is. I think it's like a solid 3 stars. Like, it was fine. I'm glad I read it at least. The next thing that I read was The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Me and Leigh Bardugo might not be pals. I'm sorry to say it. Is this bad? No. Is this badly written? Absolutely not. Leigh Bardugo knows how to write. Is this boring? I would say so. I would say that it's boring. I would say it's slow. I would say that it probably didn't need to be quite this long. Is the couple cute? Yeah, I like them together. Don't get me wrong. Is it an interesting premise? Yeah. We've got the Spanish Inquisition. We've got a Jewish girl fumbling her way into a working maid position for a trying to be wealthy, fronting as wealthy but not actually wealthy family. She's now theirs to do as they please with, and that means that she's joining a trial of magic, but magic's also bad. It's like a weird setup to like try to explain. But yeah, I think that the women were interesting. I think that the romance was sweet and cute. I will forget everything about this by next month. Like, it just wasn't engaging and gripping. Yes, I was also in a reading slump, let's all keep that in mind, but it just didn't grab my attention when I was listening to the audiobook. I just didn't care what was going to happen next. I was so over it. I had 34 minutes left of this thing, and it took me 2 weeks to want to pick it back up. It just wasn't a story that like you could put down and like think about later. It just was what it is. It was just another book. I know a lot of people are loving this though. They're really enjoying it. I'm so happy for them. People seem to really like the Shadow Daddy in here. I thought he was like okay. I didn't think he was that great, but I'm happy to have read this since I own it. And so it feels good to read things off my shelves. But yeah, I just don't know if like Leigh Bardugo and I are going to be good friends. I've not enjoyed Ninth House. There's like things that I enjoy about her writing, but like the overall impact of her stories just leave me desiring more. So I don't know where Leigh and I are going to go from here. I will be reading her backlog at some point because I would love to read her young adult, but I just don't know what this means for us. But yeah, I recommend this if you're interested in it, if it sounds good to you, but I also know a lot of people had the same issues that I did with it just being slow and not a book you really have a desire to pick back up. But, oh gosh, the last thing that I read was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. Fuck. This is my first time reading Paul Tremblay, and let me tell you, I will definitely be reading more. This did not disappoint. Did this mentally fuck me up? Yeah. I have... Life's been hard, okay? Things haven't been super great. Mentally, life-wise, so on and so forth. Things have been kind of hard lately. And I read this at work, and it was like, oh, it'll take me 3 hours. Half of this book is like the manuscript for the horror movie that was never properly filmed. Okay, let me explain the premise. The premise is we're following the thin kid who was a young 20-something-year-old being in his friend's movie, and it was titled Horror Movie, and things were just, it was an unlucky set. Things were going bad, and the film was never fully produced and never like introduced to the world, except for 3 little snippets of clips that kind of grew a cult following. And like 30 years later or something like that, we are following the thin kid who is writing the audiobook and talking about the experience of getting horror movie made again, traditionally with like a proper studio. This book is heartbreakingly good. I will say, Americans, we have a really good audiobook production. You can hear the page flipping as they're all reading the scripts. They're messing up the words, which I didn't love that. I understand the charm of having to reread the lines because you mess up, because I, as a dyslexic person, also do that. But having other people do that for me, it makes it real confusing when you're trying to read along with the audiobook. But overall, it was a great production experience. The writing is, yes, pretentious, but also like really good, and I really did love it. I will definitely be picking up the Paul's Bear Club now, for sure. I really did think that this was good. Back to what I was saying though, mentally wasn't in a wonderful place when I was reading this, and the day after I finished this, I was very mentally unwell. There is a character in here who has temptations with suicide in some ways. The way that she's characterized is so beautiful and poetic and genius, but also I was in a dark place, and so reading about that character didn't help a whole lot. I don't know if I've made so many KMS jokes in a workplace day before, but it put me in a little bit of a dark place. I'm fine now, I'm better, but it definitely like wasn't something I was expecting. I hadn't heard anybody really talk about like the trigger warnings or anything, and normally that's not an issue for me, but sometimes, you know, sometimes you're just not in the right place for it, and that's okay. So enter at your own risk, take care of yourself. If you're in a dark place, maybe not the book for you right now, come back to it another time. But I do think like I still gave it a 4.5, like 5 stars. Like I think it's a very good book. I think it was so incredibly well written and done, and the ending is just like, I'm sorry? Like, what do you mean that's the end? It just like, it captured me in such a way. Like I was so hooked and invested. I didn't want to stop reading. I was just like, I had to keep going. It was a really good experience. What a beautiful way to end my reading month, because what a bad reading month. So not like a terrible month overall stat wise, but you know, not like my best. Hopefully September will be like so very smooth and wonderful and beautiful and great, and everything good will come to me. But yeah, that's my wrap up. That was my month of August. How did your reading month go? I hope that it went really well. It went better than mine for sure. Have you read any of these? I definitely think like, I think that I'm going to be in quite the horror thriller mood this fall. I was browsing Powell's bookstore over the weekend, and like once I walked down the horror section, like I just felt at peace. I was like, yes, this is my happy place right now. I'm clearly not in the same fantasy mood as I thought I was. Horror is where it's at, so I'm very excited to dive into more horror. If you have recommendations for horror books that I should check out this autumn, please leave them down in the description box for me. No, you leave them in the comments. I type in the description, you type in comments. I know how YouTube works, don't worry. If you have horror recommendations, please leave them down for me, because I am ready to sink my teeth into it all. I'm so excited for crispy leaves and cold sweater weather. So yes, I'm excited. I'm ready to get spooked this year. But that's gonna be everything for my reading wrap up. Let me know how your month went, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye!